Security guards at a quiet gas station thought it was just another routine night. But when a black woman walked in, everything changed in an instant. Within seconds, she was surrounded, questioned, and detained, accused of something she hadn't done. Shoppers watched in stunned silence, phones raised but voices trembling. Fear, confusion, and anger rippled through the air. Little did anyone know, a single decision she made next would not only expose the truth, but shake the very foundation of authority and accountability. By the time her call reached the top, no one involved would ever see their career the same way again. She had spent the day running errands, trying to keep life moving despite the weight of the world pressing on her shoulders. The sun was beginning its slow descent, painting the sky with streaks of orange and purple, when she pulled into the small, almost forgotten gas station on the edge of town. Its flickering neon sign buzzed faintly, the smell of gasoline mixing with the faint scent of overcooked fries from the convenience store inside. Inside, the station was quiet, almost eerily so, with only a few other late-day customers scattered around. She moved with purpose, grabbing a bottled water and a snack, her mind elsewhere, thinking about bills, deadlines, and the exhaustion of a week that felt far too long. There was nothing about her presence that warranted attention, or so she thought. But to the security guard stationed near the entrance, her every step seemed to trigger suspicion. Their eyes followed her in a way that made the air feel heavier, colder, as if she had entered a space where her very existence was under scrutiny. There was a subtle shift in the energy, an invisible line she had crossed without realizing it. And then it happened. A casual glance, a hushed conversation, a decision made in the blink of an eye. And suddenly, she found herself being approached, questions laced with accusation. The tension that had been simmering beneath the surface snapped, leaving her heart pounding and her mind racing. In that moment, she understood that this was not just about a misunderstanding. It was about bias, assumption, and a system that often judged people before they even spoke. What started as a simple visit to refuel her car was about to become a test of courage, resilience, and the power of one voice against an institution that underestimated her. The approach from the security guard was sudden, yet deliberate, cutting through the hum of fluorescent lights and the soft murmur of late-night customers. She froze for a split second, instinctively questioning what she had done wrong, but there was nothing. No stolen items, no aggressive behavior, nothing. Yet the guard's gaze was unwavering, a silent accusation pressing down on her like the weight of an unseen hand. Her heart began to race, each beat echoing louder than the last in the otherwise quiet store. Other patrons glanced over, their expressions a mix of curiosity and unease, but no one intervened. She tried to remain calm, explaining herself, emphasizing that she hadn't broken any rules, that she had simply come to buy a drink and leave. Her words were measured, calm, but they seemed to fall on deaf ears. The guard's suspicion only deepened, each movement from her side interpreted as evidence, every gesture scrutinized. Minutes felt like hours as the situation escalated. The guard's insistence became more forceful, and what had started as a routine interaction morphed into a full confrontation. She felt the eyes of the few bystanders drilling into her back, the weight of their silent judgment pressing down as if they were complicit in the injustice unfolding. The tension in the room thickened, almost tangible, making it hard to breathe. It was then that she remembered her phone tucked safely in her bag, a lifeline she had relied on countless times before. Her fingers trembled as she dialed, knowing she had the power to shift the course of events with a single call. The seconds crawled, each ring magnifying the intensity of the moment. The security guard, unaware of her action, maintained his rigid stance, a man convinced of his authority, blind to the truth that hovered just out of reach. And then, the call connected. Her voice, calm yet unwavering, pierced through the tension, reaching someone higher, someone who could challenge the injustice before her. What followed was a delicate but fierce exchange of accountability and truth, a confrontation that exposed the guard's assumptions and prejudices in stark relief. With each word, the imbalance of power began to tip, her courage cutting through the atmosphere like a blade, making clear that one person's bias could no longer dictate the narrative. Every moment was a heartbeat closer to change, a push against a system that often overlooked dignity, fairness, and humanity. She stood, not just for herself, but for anyone who had ever been unfairly judged or treated as less. The rise in tension was not just personal, it was universal, a mirror reflecting the countless silent struggles faced every day in spaces meant to feel safe. And as the story began to unfold toward its inevitable peak, it became clear that no one watching, or witnessing, would forget what happened next. The moment the call reached the top, the air in the gas station seemed to shift, charged with a tension so thick it was almost suffocating. The security guard, once so confident in his authority, felt the first crack in the armor of his self-assuredness. Words he had taken for granted, the power he assumed he held, now seemed hollow, powerless against the truth being laid bare on the other end of the line. She stood there, calm but unyielding, the weight of fear transformed into clarity. Every accusation he had leveled, every assumption he had made about her intentions, was unraveling with a quiet, relentless precision. The voice on the other end, firm, authoritative, and demanding accountability, echoed through the tiny store like a judge's gavel, piercing the pretense of control he had clung to. Customers watched, some frozen, some whispering, as the guard's composure began to crumble. His usual confidence faltered, gestures grew sharp and defensive, and a tremor of panic crept into his voice. He had miscalculated. He had underestimated her presence, her resolve, and the system that would not tolerate his prejudice. In that tense moment, time seemed to stretch. Each second held the weight of consequences that could no longer be ignored. The injustice so clear to everyone present was being exposed for what it was: bias masquerading as authority, assumption disguised as vigilance. And she, steady, dignified, unbroken, became the center of a revelation that would ripple far beyond the walls of the gas station. Then came the final blow. A directive, firm and unambiguous, stripped the guard of the power he had wielded so carelessly. Every decision he had made, every biased judgment he had allowed to guide his actions, was now under scrutiny, and there was no retreat, no excuse sufficient to protect him. The authority he had relied on to assert dominance was no longer his shield. It was the mirror reflecting the damage his prejudice had caused. As the reality of accountability sank in, the atmosphere shifted again, this time not with fear or tension, but with a sense of resolution in the making. The climax was not just a personal victory, it was a confrontation with the larger truths about justice, race, and the cost of assumptions. In those moments, the gas station became more than a place of commerce. It became a stage for courage, integrity, and the undeniable power of one voice to confront systemic injustice. The aftermath of that night lingered far beyond the flickering lights of the gas station. The guard, once confident and unchallenged, faced consequences he could not ignore. His career, built on authority and assumption, crumbled under the weight of accountability. Meanwhile, she walked away, not with a sense of triumph, but with the quiet power that comes from standing up for what is right. She had turned fear into action, suspicion into proof, and injustice into a lesson that could not be erased. The story spread quickly, shared by those who had witnessed the events, and amplified by the courage of her voice. People began to talk, not just about one incident, but about the patterns of bias that had long gone unchallenged. Conversations sparked in homes, workplaces, and online forums about fairness, accountability, and the subtle ways racial prejudice can infiltrate everyday life. Her stand had become a catalyst for awareness, a reminder that even a single act of courage can ripple into something far greater than the moment itself. And yet, the real impact went deeper. It was not merely about holding one individual accountable. It was about proving that dignity and humanity cannot be ignored. It was a message to anyone who has ever felt judged unfairly, to anyone who has been dismissed or doubted because of their race. Your voice matters, your courage matters, and your persistence can create change. In the quiet that followed, she reflected on what had happened and realized that true strength is often silent, measured in moments of restraint, clarity, and moral courage. The incident at the gas station became more than a confrontation. It became a symbol of accountability, resilience, and the power of truth in the face of bias. If you've ever witnessed injustice or stood up for what's right, take a moment to think about the impact one person can have. Share this story to raise awareness, comment below with your thoughts or experiences, and don't forget to like, because conversations like this are how change begins.